where you'll get early access to all our stories along with unique tales of cheating partners you won't find anywhere else. You can subscribe now by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment, or simply search for Betrayal Chronicles on YouTube. Don't miss out. Subscribe and listen to exclusive stories. You won't regret it. Now let's begin the story. Dr. James Holt, his hands still steady from performing a demanding 16-hour heart surgery, gripped his car keys as he pulled into his driveway. This well-regarded cardiothoracic surgeon had left St. Joseph Medical Center earlier than usual, intending to catch up on a stack of paperwork from his recent cases. The evening shadows stretched across his high-end suburban home as he entered quietly, his instinct for silent movement serving him well. As he neared his study, Amanda's voice floated down from their bedroom, carrying an unfamiliar tone of cold calculation. "Mom, I've got it all figured out." Amanda's words cut through the stillness. James froze, his hand hovering over the study door handle. Something in her voice, a smug satisfaction, made him pause. "Once he finishes paying for the kid's college, I'm filing for divorce." Amanda continued, her words piercing James's heart. "Then I'll accuse him of personal misconduct and live off his money with Alex and the kids." James's world shifted off balance. Alex Bius, the fitness coach, the man who had been conveniently spending extra time with his wife under the pretense of helping her improve her game. The secret messages that made Amanda smile to herself. Her sudden commitment to fitness, spending countless hours at the tennis club. The pieces fit together with the precision James used in his surgeries. Late evening tennis sessions, hushed phone conversations, the way Amanda's eyes brightened at the mention of her training sessions. A less disciplined man might have stormed in and confronted her on the spot. But James Holt hadn't become one of the leading heart surgeons in the country by acting impulsively. His mind, sharpened by years of high-stakes procedures, was already analyzing, planning, strategizing. Silently, he withdrew to his study, moving as deliberately as he would with a scalpel in a critical operation. He sat behind his desk, maintaining a neutral expression, though his eyes held the same intense focus his surgical team recognized. Amanda's voice continued down the hall, detailing her scheme to her mother, unaware that her carefully crafted plans were beginning to unravel. In the following days, James carried on with the same precision he used in surgery, but this time, his careful steps aimed to expose Amanda's betrayal. Every move was calculated, every reaction measured. During breakfast, he maintained his usual habits, browsing medical journals while sipping his coffee, seemingly oblivious to Amanda's poorly hidden smirks at her phone. His phone, however, discreetly recorded every exchange, every slight interaction. At the hospital, James threw himself into preparations for a groundbreaking heart procedure. If successful, it could transform treatment options for countless patients. His colleagues noted his heightened focus, attributing it to the significance of the upcoming surgery. Dr. Holt, a young resident, approached him during rounds. "The board is especially interested in the outcome of this procedure." James nodded, his mind juggling multiple tasks. The surgery prep, the evidence gathering, the charade of normalcy. "Then we'll make sure to exceed their expectations." Meanwhile, Amanda grew bolder in her indiscretions. At the country club, she sat too closely to Alex Pierce, their heads close over so-called training schedules. James observed from a distance, noting how mutual friends shifted uncomfortably, their forced smiles betraying unease. His longtime friend and fellow doctor, Michael Barnes, approached him at the bar. "Hey, James. Amanda mentioned she'd be out late tonight. Something about an emergency tennis committee meeting?" James noted the slight tremor in Michael's voice, the way he couldn't quite meet James's eyes. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Jay was complicit in covering Amanda's affair. "Thanks for letting me know," James replied smoothly, noting this betrayal along with the others. Later that day, James met with Mark Thompson, the city's top divorce attorney. The meeting took place in a private room at a downtown restaurant, away from prying eyes. "Document everything," Thompson advised, his expression serious. "Every meeting, every call, every suspicious transaction." James pulled out a tablet, showing the evidence he'd already compiled. "I'm ahead of you on that." Thompson raised an eyebrow as he swiped through the files. Most clients come to me with suspicions. You're bringing me a case. The discovery of Amanda's hidden bank account came through a thorough investigation. James traced the money transfers with the same meticulous attention he used in reviewing medical charts. Each transaction revealed a layer of calculated betrayal. Then came the email from Laura Pierce. Alex's ex-wife had heard rumors about his latest student and felt compelled to reach out. Dr. Holt, her message began, you should know that Alex has a pattern. He specifically targets affluent married women. Your wife isn't his first and she won't be his last. Laura's message added a critical piece to the puzzle. Alex Pierce wasn't just an opportunistic fitness coach. He was a calculated predator with a history of similar affairs. At the hospital, James redirected his personal turmoil into his professional work. The revolutionary surgery he'd been preparing became his anchor, a reminder of his identity beyond the turmoil in his marriage. The operation itself was a masterpiece of surgical precision. For 8 hours, James worked with unwavering focus, his hands steady as he pioneered a new technique that would change lives. Impressive work. Dr. Holt, Dr. Charles Nelson, the chief of surgery, congratulated him afterward. This will put St. Joseph Medical Center on the map. The celebration dinner that followed was an exercise in self-control. Amanda played her role flawlessly, holding onto James's arm and smiling proudly. But her phone kept lighting up under the table, Alex's messages contrasting her performance. Later that night, as James worked in his study, Amanda's voice drifted through the house. She was on another call with her mother, unaware every word was being recorded. The allegations need to be believable, her mother advised. We'll start small. Emotional manipulation first, then escalate. What about the kids? Amanda asked, referring to Taylor and Ethan. They need to side with me for this to work. They're in college now, her mother replied. Promise them whatever they want. Once we get James's money, we can control the story. James sat in his dimly lit study, listening to his wife and mother-in-law plot his downfall. His expression remained calm, but his eyes held the same intensity they did during complex surgeries. Every word they spoke was more evidence, another tool he would use to cut this cancer out of his life. As he sat there, James Holt wasn't just a surgeon planning a precision strike. He was a man preparing to excise the malignancy, threatening everything he had built. And like every surgery he performed, failure wasn't an option. James Holt sat in his office at St. Joseph Medical Center, his fingers gliding over the keyboard with surgical precision. The screen displayed his banking interface. As he systematically transferred assets to secure accounts he had set up days before. Each transaction was documented, photographed, and logged with the same thoroughness he applied to his medical records. A notification popped up, confirming another successful transfer. The joint accounts were gradually being emptied, although James carefully left enough to avoid legal complications. His cursor hovered over the college tuition payment portal before he clicked cancel on the upcoming payments. His phone buzzed, a text from Taylor and Ethan confirming their lunch plans. James chose an upscale restaurant across town, far from the usual spots where Amanda's social circle might see them. The twins arrived together, their father's punctuality evident in their timing. Taylor, with her father's analytical mind, and Ethan, with his quiet resilience, took their seats. Concern showed in their eyes at their father's unusual secrecy. Dad, what's going on? Taylor asked, her pre-med background making her particularly sensitive to subtle changes. You've never asked us to meet like this. James pulled out his tablet, his face somber. There's something you need to hear, he said, pressing play on the first recording. Amanda's voice filled the private room, detailing her plans to accuse their father falsely. The twins' expressions shifted as they listened, shock, disgust, and anger playing across their faces. That's not even all of it, James said softly, playing a second recording, the conversation about using the twins themselves. Ethan's fist clenched. She was going to manipulate us? Against you? Taylor's expression hardened, mirroring her father's surgical focus. The tennis lessons. The late-night meetings. It was all with Alex? James nodded, allowing his children to process the betrayal at their own pace. He'd seen enough patients receive life-changing news to know when silence was best. What are you going to do? Taylor finally asked. I'm handling it, James replied, his voice steady. But I needed you to know the truth before things unfold. Your tuition payments have been paused. Good, Ethan interjected. We don't want her money. Or her manipulation, Taylor added, her voice cold. James studied his children, seeing in them the same strength he'd relied on throughout his career. This won't be easy. Your mother will try to turn this against me. Against us. The twins exchanged glances before Taylor spoke for both of them. We're with you, Dad. All the way. Meanwhile, across town, Amanda stared at her banking app in growing panic. The accounts were nearly empty, the regular transfers she'd come to rely on had stopped, and her credit cards were declined. Her manicured fingers trembled as she called Alex. Something's wrong, she hissed into the phone. All the money. It's gone. Alex's voice oozed false confidence. Don't worry, babe. We'll figure something out. James probably just made a mistake with the accounts. But Amanda heard the undertone in his voice. The slight waver, suggesting his interest lay more with the missing money than with her welfare. As she ended the call, Amanda noticed an email notification. Payment declined, university tuition. Her carefully constructed plan was starting to unravel. And for the first time, real fear crept into her heart. The confrontation erupted in James's home office that evening. Amanda burst through the door, her face flushed with anger and panic. What have you done? She demanded, waving her phone, displaying the empty account balances. How dare you? How dare I? James's voice cut through her tirade, cool and precise as a scalpel. That's an interesting choice of words, Amanda. Don't play games with me, she snarled. Ethan at you. One phone call to the police about domestic crime. James pressed a button on his computer, and Amanda's voice filled the room. Then I'll accuse him of domestic crime and live with Alex and the kids from his money? Amanda's face drained of color. James continued playing segments of recordings, her conversations with her mother, her plans to manipulate their children. You've been recording me? She whispered, her bravado crumbling. Let's be precise, James said, his tone clinical. I've been gathering evidence. Something any reasonable person would do when they discover a conspiracy against them. Across town, Alex Pierce was already distancing himself from the imploding situation. He'd seen the writing on the wall the moment Amanda mentioned the frozen accounts. In the tennis club's private courts, he focused his attention on Mandy, a young student with a trust fund and naive eyes. Your form is really improving, he said smoothly, standing closer than necessary to adjust her stance. The same moves he'd used on Amanda, recycled for a new target. Amanda's frantic calls went straight to voicemail. Her text messages received increasingly shorter responses until they stopped altogether. The reality of her situation began to sink in as she watched her lover's attention shift to younger, wealthier prey. Michael Barnes, believing himself clever, attempted to warn Amanda about James's evidence collection. He cornered her after a country club luncheon. Amanda, you need to be careful. James knows everything, he whispered. He's been gathering proof. Dr. Barnes, a stern voice interrupted. Two men in suits approached, badges glinting. We're from the insurance fraud division. We need to discuss some irregularities in your billing practices. Michael's face went pale as he realized James had outmaneuvered him too. His years of insurance fraud, carefully hidden, had been exposed with surgical precision. Amanda and her mother launched their desperate counterattack, spreading whispers through the hospital corridors about James's supposed instability and aggression. But they miscalculated badly. Dr. Holt's revolutionary surgery saved my daughter's life, one board member declared during an emergency meeting. These accusations are absurd. Dr. Charles Nelson, standing at the head of the conference table, addressed the board. Dr. Holt's work has put St. Joseph Medical Center at the forefront of cardiac care. His reputation is impeccable. The rumors died quickly, suffocated by James's sterling reputation and recent surgical triumph. Amanda's attempts to tarnish his professional life only served to further isolate her. Taylor and Ethan packed their belongings from the family home efficiently, their movements precise and determined. They'd inherited their father's ability to compartmentalize emotion when necessary. She actually thought we'd believe her over Dad, Ethan muttered, boxing up photos from happier times. Taylor nodded, her expression grim. She never really knew us at all. James's new apartment was smaller, but warmly furnished, a fresh start free from Amanda's influence. The twins settled in easily, their presence transforming the space into a real home. Alex made one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. He approached James in the hospital parking lot, a manila envelope in his hands. "I have evidence that could embarrass you," he said, trying to sound threatening. "Photos. Emails." James didn't let him finish. Without a word, he handed Alex his own envelope. Inside were detailed reports of Alex's previous scams, statements from other wealthy women he'd targeted, and financial records showing his pattern of fraud. "Would you like to compare evidence?" James asked quietly, his surgeon's eyes dissecting Alex's bravado. "Or would you prefer to walk away while you still can?" Alex's swagger deflated as he realized he'd brought a knife to a gunfight. James had outmaneuvered him at every turn, his precision and thoroughness leaving no room for counterplay. As Alex slunk away, his schemes in tatters, Amanda watched from her car across the street. Her carefully constructed world had crumbled to dust. Her lover had abandoned her, her children despised her, and her husband had proved to be far more formidable than she'd ever imagined. The man she dismissed as a workaholic surgeon, too absorbed in his career to notice her deception, had systematically dismantled her life with the same precision he used in the operating room. And like his surgeries, his operation had been a complete success. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Mark Thompson rose to present James Holt's case. The veteran divorce attorney moved with the confidence of a man holding a winning hand. "Your Honor," Thompson began, "what we have here is not merely a case of infidelity, but a calculated conspiracy to defraud and defame my client." Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her bargain store outfit a stark contrast to her former designer wardrobe. Her attorney, a public defender since no private lawyer would take her case, shuffled papers nervously. Thompson methodically presented the evidence: recordings, financial records, photographs. Each piece clicked into place like a surgical instrument being laid out for an operation. "And now, Your Honor, we present evidence of premeditated plans to falsely accuse Dr. Holt of domestic crime." Thompson played the recordings that had first alerted James to his wife's betrayal. Amanda's face contorted with rage and fear as her own voice filled the courtroom. "Then I'll accuse him of domestic crime and live with Alex and the kids from his money?" The judge's expression darkened with each new piece of evidence. When Amanda's mother took the stand to testify against James, Thompson was ready. "Mrs. Thompson," he addressed Amanda's mother, "could you explain these emails?" He projected a series of messages onto the courtroom screen, showing years of the older woman facilitating her daughter's affairs. "That's private correspondence," Amanda's mother sputtered. "Indeed," Thompson replied coldly. "Private correspondence showing a pattern of enabling adultery and fraud. Not just with Mr. Pierce, but with 3 other men over the past decade." The courtroom stirred as this revelation landed. Amanda's mother deflated on the stand, her credibility evaporating. Next came the twins' testimony. Taylor took the stand first, her composure matching her father's surgical precision. "My mother saw us as assets," Taylor stated, her voice clear and firm. "She planned to use us as weapons against our father. But Dad never once spoke ill of her to us. He let the truth speak for itself." Ethan followed, his testimony equally damaging. "While Mom was plotting with her fitness coach, Dad was saving lives and supporting our dreams." The choice of who to believe wasn't hard. Throughout their testimony, James sat stoically, his expression neutral, but his eyes reflecting pride in his children's strength. The judge's disgust became increasingly evident as the case unfolded. When news arrived that Alex Pierce had fled town, served with multiple lawsuits from previous victims emboldened by James's stand, it was the final nail in Amanda's coffin. "These other women," Thompson explained, "all wealthy, all targeted by Mr. Pierce, all with similar stories. Mrs. Holt wasn't his first victim, but thanks to Dr. Holt's actions, she will be his last." Amanda slumped in her chair as her carefully constructed world collapsed completely. The lover who had promised to stand by her was gone. Her mother had been discredited, and her own children had testified against her. The judge's ruling was decisive and devastating. 3 months after the divorce ruling, Amanda stood outside James's apartment building, her expensive makeup unable to hide the toll of recent events. She pressed the buzzer repeatedly, her desperation evident. James answered the door, his expression impassive. The contrast between them was stark. While Amanda showed the strain of her downfall, James looked stronger than ever. "James, please," Amanda began, tears streaming down her face. "I've lost everything. I made a terrible mistake. We could try again, start over." Without a word, James pressed play on his phone. Amanda's voice filled the hallway. "Once he's done paying for the kid's college, I'm filing for divorce. Then I'll accuse him of domestic crime." Amanda's pleas died in her throat as James quietly shut the door, the soft click more final than any slam could have been. Inside the apartment, Taylor and Ethan were setting up for a holiday dinner, their first of many new traditions. The twins had flourished in their college environments, their father's unwavering support allowing them to focus on their studies despite the family turmoil. "She tried again?" Taylor asked, though she already knew the answer. James nodded once, then turned to help with dinner preparations. There was no need to dwell on Amanda's desperate attempts at reconciliation. At St. Joseph Medical Center, James's reputation had only grown stronger. His pioneering work in cardiac surgery attracted international attention, and his handling of personal adversity earned him deep respect from colleagues. Among these colleagues, Dr. Claudia Reynolds, a brilliant anesthesiologist, had worked alongside James during several groundbreaking procedures. Their professional rapport gradually evolved into something more, built on mutual respect and shared values. 1 year later, James's new home filled with warmth and laughter as Taylor and Ethan returned for summer break. The elegant but comfortable house reflected its owner, sophisticated without pretense, welcoming but dignified. "Did you hear about Mom?" Ethan asked, showing his father a social media post. Amanda's new life as a receptionist at a small clinic was a far cry from her previous social status. "And Alex has been arrested in Arizona," Taylor added. "Tried his scam on the wrong woman, a state prosecutor." James absorbed the news with quiet satisfaction, but his attention was drawn to the doorbell. Claudia arrived, bringing dessert for their family dinner. Her presence felt natural, unforced, the antithesis of Amanda's calculated performances. Taylor and Ethan exchanged knowing looks as they watched their father with Claudia. This was what a real relationship looked like, built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine care. As they settled around the dinner table, James's phone rang. Dr. Charles Nelson's name flashed on the screen. "Congratulations, Chief of Surgery," Nelson announced without preamble. The board's decision was unanimous. James shared the news with his loved ones, their genuine celebration a stark contrast to the artificial praise of his previous life. Looking around the table, he saw his real family. Children who chose truth over manipulation, a potential partner who valued integrity over appearances, and a future built on his own terms. The game-changing surgery that had coincided with Amanda's betrayal had become a footnote in his success story. By refusing to be a victim, by methodically excising the cancer of betrayal from his life, James had shown his children what real strength looked like. As laughter filled his new home, James Holt knew that every calculated decision, every carefully planned step away from betrayal, had led him to something better than mere survival. He had turned crisis into opportunity, betrayal into triumph. The man who had saved countless lives in the operating room had also saved himself, and in doing so, had built a life more genuine and fulfilling than the one Amanda had tried to destroy. Epilogue: 5 years later, time had a way of revealing the true consequences of betrayal. For Amanda Henderson, formerly Amanda Holt, the fall from grace continued long after the divorce. The small clinic where she worked as a receptionist had closed, forcing her to take an even lower position at a veterinary office. Her once manicured hands, now rough from cleaning kennels, served as a daily reminder of her downfall. The modest studio apartment she called home was a far cry from the luxurious house she had shared with James. Her mother, disgraced by the revelation of her role in multiple affairs, had retreated to a small town in Florida, their relationship strained by mutual blame. The society circles that had once been Amanda's entire world now treated her as a cautionary tale. Her name was whispered at country club gatherings, not in gossip, but in warnings to young wives about the price of betrayal. Alex Pierce's fate had been even more severe. After his arrest in Arizona, investigations revealed a pattern of fraud spanning multiple states. He now resided in a federal prison, serving an 8-year sentence for wire fraud and extortion. His victims, emboldened by James's example, had come forward one by one, each testimony adding years to his sentence. His charming smile and fitness expertise meant little in the prison yard. Michael Barnes, following his conviction for insurance fraud, had lost his medical license. Last anyone heard, he was selling pharmaceutical supplies in a neighboring state. His professional reputation permanently tarnished. His wife had divorced him, taking their children and leaving him to face his disgrace alone. In stark contrast, James Holt's life had flourished. Under his leadership as chief of surgery, St. Joseph Medical Center had become a leading center for cardiac innovation. His pioneering techniques had saved countless lives, and medical students competed fiercely for residency positions under his mentorship. His marriage to Claudia 2 years after the divorce had brought a new dimension of joy to his life. Their partnership, built on mutual respect and shared values, showed Taylor and Ethan what genuine love looked like. Claudia's steady presence and brilliant mind complemented James's strength perfectly, their combined medical expertise making them a formidable team in the operating room and in life. Taylor had followed in her father's footsteps, excelling in medical school and showing promise in cardiothoracic surgery. Her analytical mind and steady hands suggested she would carry on the Holt legacy of medical excellence. Ethan had chosen a different path, becoming a successful criminal defense attorney, his father's experience having shown him the importance of justice and truth. The twins maintained no contact with their mother. They had received multiple letters from Amanda over the years, each more desperate than the last, but these remained unopened in a drawer. They had chosen to focus on the authentic relationships in their lives rather than the manipulation of their past. James and Claudia's home had become the center of family gatherings, filled with the warmth of genuine affection. Holiday dinners, once tense affairs under Amanda's superficial perfectionism, were now celebrations of real connection. The addition of Claudia's young daughter from her previous marriage had brought new light to James's role as a father, showing him that family bonds transcended biological ties. Dr. Charles Nelson, now semi-retired, often remarked that the hospital's remarkable transformation under James's leadership had its roots in that pivotal moment of personal crisis. Some men are broken by betrayal, he would say. Others use it as a forge to remake themselves stronger. Laura Pierce, Alex's ex-wife who had first warned James, had found her own peace. Her decision to reach out had not only helped James, but had given other victims the courage to come forward. She occasionally consulted with advocacy groups, helping women identify and avoid predatory relationships. The country club that had once been the stage for Amanda's indiscretions had changed as well. The old guard of enablers and secret keepers had largely been replaced by a younger crowd who valued authenticity over appearances. James maintained his membership, though he rarely visited. His focus was on substance rather than social status. One day, as James left the hospital after a successful surgery, he passed a woman in shabby medical scrubs leaving a hiring agency. It took him a moment to recognize Amanda, her appearance so far removed from the polished socialite she had once been. Their eyes met briefly, hers filled with desperate recognition, his with complete indifference. He continued to his car without breaking stride, his mind already on the family dinner awaiting him at home. That evening, surrounded by the love of his true family, Claudia, the twins, their partners, and his stepdaughter, James realized that Amanda's betrayal had ultimately been a gift. It had stripped away the artificial facade of his previous life, allowing him to build something real and lasting in its place. The man who had once discovered his wife's betrayal through an overheard phone call was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and more complete. A man who had turned trauma into triumph, betrayal into blessing, and loss into legacy. James Holt had not just survived. He had redefined what it meant to win. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos from us. What do you think about today's topic? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found the video helpful, feel free to share it with your friends and family. We hope you had a great time. See you in the next video with even more exciting content. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.